Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Presenting Our Presents. It is our monthly podcast at the University of Alberta, where we just get to know some really amazing Indigenous folks and the things that they do here, the things that they are passionate about, and just visit and get to know someone a little bit better. I am the co-host. My name is Michelle Durocher. I'm from Fishing Lake, Métis Settlement. And at the university, I work in the president's office. I'm the executive operations coordinator, and I'm really excited to be with you all here today. Welcome to 2026. We're recording this in January, and I'll pass it on to my co-host to introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And hello, everybody. I'm Florence Glanfield, honored to serve as co-host of Presenting Our Presents, and I'm a citizen of the Métis Nation within Alberta. And I also have the honor of serving the university as Vice Provost Indigenous Programming and Research. We're always so grateful for the amazing colleagues and Indigenous folks that we get to work with at the University of Alberta, and look forward to our conversation today with the human that you are going to meet. So I'll invite our guests to introduce themselves in the way that is best for them today. Thank you for joining us, and please go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to see you again, Florence, and to speak with you again, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. My name is Tonya Simpson. I'm a member of Pasqua First Nation, and that's where my Kokums family is from. My Muslim is from Samson First Nation, and my paternal grandfather was from Edinburgh, and that he's who inspired this background today, Scottish weather. I've been here at the U of A since October 2022, and I work in the Department of Anthropology as a faculty service officer. And that role involves teaching courses that relate to the work that I do in forensic anthropology, also doing some research. And in the research sphere, I work as a consultant. I also worked for the RCMP K Division Missing Persons Unit for 8 years. I think this unexpected blessing and journey that I've been having lately has been in the curatorial work that I've been doing. And that's how I've come to meet Florence and become involved with or be on this podcast today.
Well, that's so cool, Tonya. Yeah, I think we had originally talked a little bit about your curatorial work and some of the projects that you've done. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the reburial project that you were talking about before?
Certainly. So about 3 weeks into joining the University of Alberta, I had a meeting with University of Alberta Museums, and it was really to catch me up on this project that had started in 2017. So of course, well before I was there, I was actually a grad student here in the department at that time. But it's been this ongoing reburial regarding 3 ancestors who were found in right near the city of Medicine Hat in 1967. And they've been cared for within the osteology collection since that time. They were brought here and they've been under our stewardship. But there's been a big push to have them reburied and returned to the land. So that was my first brush with, these huge projects in collections and reconciliation. And it's been, I would say, the steepest learning curve, but also the most beautiful personal and professional journey that I think I ever could have imagined. I can't say, Michelle, just how grateful I feel to be involved in this project, because I've become part of this circle of experts at the University of Alberta, members from nations and community, elders, people from the City of Medicine Hat and the Meosin Friendship Center, who are just meeting with such good intentions to, see ancestors return to the landscape. And it's not something I ever imagined I would be a part of.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique process ceremony, even, right? To be a part of, to be able to return ancestors back to their land, let them rest. I mean, I understand there was probably reasons to begin with why they were taken and stewarded in a collection of sorts. But this process of returning and reburying, I think, is very important. What is one of the things that you've really learned in this process, in this project?
That's an excellent question, Michelle. I mean, this project, I really came into this role, like I was drawn to this position because I wanted to do forensic anthropology, right? So the curatorial learning um, has been a bit of a surprise because I didn't expect that in taking a position at the University of Alberta, I would lean into my culture as much as I have needed to, right? To do this work. And I mean, we were raised with what my parents were able to access. But of course, there's been some lessons that didn't make it through because of these things like generational trauma, right? Um, but this work and this project has brought that forward in a way that consulting or, research maybe wouldn't have in the area that I work in forensics. So it's been a way of connecting with my heritage, but not only, and I'm a member of a Cree Nation, right? But also the cultures of everybody else who are involved, right? We're working with different nations who have different perspectives. So there's a lot of lessons that have been learned that are specific to different individuals and different nations. But I think the overarching takeaway for me is just this amazement as to how the ancestors, children, because two of the ancestors are children, and the land have come together in this way. And at this time, like a time where there's so much going on in the world, to bring us together, to have these conversations that I think need to happen, right? And I mean, there's always going to be challenges when we're talking about reconciliation. There's always going to be like no one case is the same, right? So there's a lot of learning along the way, but just seeing the team members and the members of the nation and community come together with so much grace and so much humility and good intention is, I think that's a lesson that will stay with me forever, right?
So Tonya, you you I have a question for you because you used two words that I hadn't thought much about in sort of the work. You talk about forensic and then you talk about curatorial. And I wonder if you could just explain for me the difference between, or like how you as a professional are using the language, because I'm not in those areas, so I don't understand the technical terms that you're using. And I'd appreciate that insight. Thank you.
Certainly, and that's a great question and a good reminder for us folks who are really, deep into our work. So forensics, that has to do with anything where there's an ongoing, police or medical legal investigation, right? So we're um, folks who are in my line of work are often supporting investigations for police. Maybe they're missing persons or unidentified remains that have current cases that might go to court, right? And in the curatorial context, that's really looking at all of the stewardship that's involved in caring for a museum collection. So I'm a caretaker of the osteology collection here on campus and the fossil hominid cast collection.
Oh, that's so interesting. And of course, and you introduce yourself as a forensic anthropologist. So, what is the journey that you took, and how did you become interested in this work?
Oh, Florence, I love that question. I didn't think that it was going to come up, but I'm grateful that it did because it's so full circle. My undergraduate degree was actually in biology, and I was studying at Augustana. And like half of the people there at the time, I was studying for the MCAT. I thought that I was going to pursue med school because I don't know. I think a lot of family and friends said, "Hey, you should do this. Maybe I think you would be really good at it." So I hadn't imagined anything else. Um, but there was one summer when I was volunteering in a hospital, trying to build up that CV, getting ready for the application, and I just wasn't connecting with the environment. And I thought, I don't know, like I need the sun, I need some windows, I need to be outside, I need every day to look different. And I think I felt a little bit deflated because I had put so like 3 years into preparing for this, right? But that same summer, I had my first ever field school. And the beautiful thing about Augustana campus is, it's very liberal arts. So I had a field school where it was in Indigenous anthropology, and we went to Rhode Island, Block Island specifically. There was a couple who had bought some land, and because they were going to be building a garage, they needed a survey done because it was known that there was lots of history there. So we were doing test pits, and we had also walked the shore because there was some erosion due to Hurricane Sandy. So we were looking for different points. And that experience changed my life. I completely connected with the work and the all of the ideas around heritage and being it came together in that context. So I came home and I told my parents, and specifically my Muslim, I said, Muslim, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be an anthropologist. And I didn't know what he would say because there is a bit of tension. Well, there's quite a bit of tension between many Indigenous communities and anthropology. So I wasn't sure what Muslim was going to say. But what he said was, "Hey, I know an anthropologist. I'll take you to her house for tea." And that person became my graduate student supervisor, which was it was just the most incredible, I guess, like form of support and something that was unexpected, right? And ever since that moment, I just kind of found some alignment. But I think I specifically went the forensics route because I had done an undergraduate research project with Dr. Jerome Melanson. He's now at the University of Regina. And that was around looking at violence related to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls crisis. And I was trying to understand at the time, like, we know that there's disproportionate violence, but what's driving that? Can I connect certain themes to structures in Canada, right? That are predisposing groups to this type of violence, right? So I thought that forensic anthropology was the best way to kind of marry all of those things together, and it all just happened. It was kind of like dominoes, really.
So now my question has to be, given what you've just shared, what was your finding in your undergraduate research project or that project you did? And
Okay.
then what did you do? Like, how did that translate or did it inform your master's work?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So going back to the first part, my finding was that yes, there are so many structures and so many experiences that render Indigenous women um, susceptible to violence, right? And, part of them is going to be I mean, a lot of it goes back to the systematic ways that they've been dehumanized by governments, by institutions, but also the way that their positions within traditional society has been changed by these structures, right? So that's one aspect of it. And that came from some interviews that we did during that project. And it's actually going to be published in a broader book on reconciliation with Dr. Jerome Melanson. Um, But what that did is it laid the foundations for me by saying, okay, so there's really something to this. Now, can I maybe get at some statistics, right? So in my master's, I looked at patterns in homicidal violence based on victim sex and ancestry. So I was reviewing a lot of court transcripts and trying to tie what I had seen and what I had heard during these interviews and during the literature review that I had started as an undergraduate. And I did find that there were it was really a pilot project in the master's, right? But coming out of that, I would say it looks like there are some really distinct themes in the nature of violence, and they speak to these different susceptibilities and these different structures that are affecting different groups, right? So it's interesting. That's almost a little bit more like sociology, culture. But I think that's the beauty of anthropology is you can draw on so many things to inform something.
Yeah, that's just so darn interesting. Michelle, I'm going to let you jump in. Thank you.
Thanks, Florence. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, like you said, it's all just kind of came back in the end, right? When you were talking about the project, the reburial project, and then kind of the preamble to coming to the university and being a part of that project and this other work that you were doing, the anthropology work, the forensic anthropology work. What are some of the challenges when with this reburial project, because it's a little bit closer to home than it was when you're looking at statistics, when you're looking I'm just wondering, are there any challenges there where it's a little closer to your own personal life rather than
Mhm.
statistics and interviews? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And that's thank you for that question. It's a beautiful point of reflection. Um, so when we first started this project, the first thing that I had to do as a curator was, okay, let's do an inventory. Like, who is actually in our care? What individual bones do we actually have in our care to give back? So I was preparing that report. And at that time, my kids were like obviously younger and very close in age to the age of the children, right? So the child that we have to give back would have passed between 4 and 5 years. The infant was, closer to one, right? And my kids were of a similar age, so there was a real sense of like something maternal. Like there was a lot of humanity there. And I think if there's anything that I want people to know about biological anthropologists, forensic anthropologists, like we are people first, right? We're not just, people get that from this weird idea about like clinicians and practitioners, right, from TV that we can separate everything, but no, like it's not a jacket that you can take on and off, it's humanity. So I think, and we don't have a lot of answers as to why they passed, right? And even the older woman that we have in our care, right? That's, that person would have been similar in age to my mom, right? So I was just feeling I felt very connected, I think, to them. And I was curious about like a lot of questions about in what context did they pass? What was their life like? Because from what we know, they would have lived in, later 1800s. And we know that was a really difficult time in history, right? On the plains and the prairies. So just a lot of empathy, right? And in working with the team and feeling the support, I always say we're like a teepee, we lean on each other and like it's not work that any curator can do alone, right? And I feel so blessed that we have the support of an elder to do this work.
Yeah, I like that analogy of being like a teepee and leaning on each other. That's really That's beautiful imagery. Um, I wanted to just kind of touch on something that you and I had discussed earlier because you've mentioned your children. Um, One of the other projects that we talked about, and that I didn't realize that I had already known who you were, because of your award that you won in children's literature. And I just wanted to just kind of maybe shift the narrative right now just a little, because I do want to make sure that we talk about this amazing project. And for some reason, I looked at you and you just kind of lit up when we talked about this really amazing work that you do in literature. And I'd love to touch on that a little, if you don't mind.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel so blessed in so many ways that I've been able to wrangle all of these different areas for passion and learning into something that's actually mobilizing. I started writing I've always been really into writing, but I really started to sit down and think, okay, maybe I can share this with the world when I was pregnant with my son. And that book, well, that was actually a song that I had sung to him. It was called Forever Our Home, right? And it really was born out of this realization that I wouldn't be able to build a house on my family land that I grew up on. And I wouldn't be able to share that experience with him. It would have to look different. And I wanted that, like the spirit of that land and that relationship to, continue on in my son. So I had, written this lullaby, and Orca book publishers had an open submission call. And I was kind of watching because I had a lot of their books and I liked what they were doing. Everything was very socially conscious, and they have a lot of Indigenous literature there. So I thought, heck, I'm just going to give it a try. And they published it, which was so beautiful. And that got some recognition. And it gave me a little bit of motivation and a push to write one for my daughter as well, right? Because, it's only fair, right? So when she was born, she was such a lyrical soul, right? And I wrote her a lullaby and I called it This Land is a Lullaby. And this one has been actually very widely received. It's been received really well. It's won an Alberta Literary Award and more recently the Governor General's Literary Award in the illustrated books category. So that was so exciting. And I love this book because it's really about the land and ancestors welcoming the birth of a child, and they're like rolling in on a storm and they bring a song, a midsummer storm, and it's just beautiful. So it's illustrated by Delray Dumont from Onion Lake, and Dorothy Thunder from Little Pine First Nation, who is here at the university, did the translation. Yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah, I don't think I told you this when we met earlier. The reason that it clicked for me is because I know I work in the president's office, and I know that he wanted to send a letter to you when we heard about the
Oh,
news.
yes.
So
That
I
was
was like,
cool.
oh, that's why her name was so familiar at the beginning. It's because yeah, we were informed of just as part of our duties in the president's office is when we find out that staff have had other accomplishments or even work related accomplishments that people want to share that with the president's office and Bill, and often he wants to acknowledge that kind of stuff as well. So that's why I was like, oh my gosh, that's why your name was so familiar to me. I was like, yeah, I want to meet with her, but why is that name familiar? And that's why. So that's really
So
cool.
can I jump in and say, what was the
Please.
award, Tonya? What was the name of the award that you received for the writing?
The Governor General's Literary Award for the illustrated text category.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
the other one was the R. Ross Annette Award. That was an Alberta Literary Award. So I received that one in
Cool.
June. So
Because Michelle, I don't know if Tonya also received an alumni award in 2025,
I did.
this last year from the
Oh,
University of Alberta. Yeah.
2025 was an interesting year. So
That was a big year.
it was a big year, yeah. Um, and I think I always, I'm always interested. I think you know, I don't think that I'm saying this very, very well, but everyone is doing such great work, right? And it's such an honor to be recognized, especially because it's not always easy coming into these projects. Some of these projects take a bit of a toll, right? And the writing for me has always been an outlet and a way to tease through things and articulate. I have this mantra where I'm trying to create more than I consume, right? I'm trying to be mindful that way. Because there was a point where I thought, I'm watching so much TV. Like, when did I have an original thought outside of my work? Um, but I think, receiving these awards and these recognitions have helped me to feel that's the validation of feeling, maybe I am where I'm supposed to be. Maybe I found a little bit of a groove. And also, we tend to work a little bit in our silos, like our office, right? And to know that there is some impact is it's so validating, right? And it keeps you going. So, I'm looking forward to seeing who receives those awards next year. And I love the mantra of, okay, so I got one this year, but who would I like to recognize, right? And there's an opportunity to submit and pay that forward. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, thank you. And Michelle, I apologize for interrupting, but I happened to be at the ceremony where Tonya received the award. Thank you.
That's really cool because I didn't know about that one. But yeah, it's a big year, Tonya. Um, One of the things that you just said that spiked something in me was you said something about uh, shoot, now I've lost it because I we were just talking about the award again. Um, what were you just saying? You were saying getting the recognition
Oh.
uh, and oh, that you are where you're supposed to be.
Yeah,
That's what caught me. I was like, oh, I love that. I love that idea of realizing, oh, this I'm on the right track. This feels good, and I'm getting the support that kind of reinforces that I
exactly.
am where I'm supposed to be. I also
Yeah.
think that applies to this original project that we talked about, right? This very reburial project. You are at the university for a reason. That is part of the journey, and this reconnecting um, to your Cree roots, sharing with your children these kind of creation stories,
Mhm.
lullabies, and that kind of stuff. So like I just think it's really cool to see like these parallels, but like in different technically in different areas of study.
Yes. That's that's a good point. And you know what? I think especially for somebody who like I'm coming at this work from a mixed heritage, right? I feel like I have splinters of a knowledge system that I'm trying to tie together, and I'm very open and honest about that. Like, yes, I'm an Indigenous writer. I'm also Scottish, right? But I'm trying to weave these ways of knowing into a way that can hopefully have some positive impact, right? And when I was growing up, I was often, reminded of the teaching of rainbow children, right? People who come from mixed backgrounds and, the bridges that we're meant to make. And I think in receiving these recognitions, it's helped me to like get rid of some of this imposter syndrome of thinking, okay, like I don't know enough, or I don't have the same background as somebody else, right? Am I the right person to be here in this project? And I think, for people who are coming, maybe experiencing some of that, because I think when you're walking into worlds, many of us have a little bit of doubt, right? receiving those kind of recognitions and positive feedback and building these connections and moving these projects forward with intentionality, right? Like we talk about leading with purpose. It's so helpful in saying, you know what, it's you don't have to have the answers, right? It's about building those connections and we're working to create something new together because maybe those answers aren't out there yet, right? But I think just this idea of being open has been so formative, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is. Once we kind of feel connection to each other and we can kind of bridge those gaps. And like you said, we're often so much in silos in this world, really, but also at this university. Um, but bridging those gaps, making those connections, gathering with good intentions, wanting to do things in a good way, then wherever we all go together is is better than going alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. And I love the way you said that. And it's even in line with what I think this podcast is doing, right? Building community and thinking, okay, what is the direction that we're going to take together, right? And we're all just going to figure it out, right? And have faith that we can make change, right?
Yeah, that's really cool. And now so you've shared a lot about the work you do, Tonya, but I also understand in your role, you teach.
Yes.
And so what kinds of courses do you teach? Like what might be an experience that a human might have in the courses you teach?
Great question. Okay, so I have taught forensic anthropology a few times. I'm starting to offer that every fall. So in that course, we're really learning about how forensic anthropologists are providing information to investigators that might inform the death event or be used to identify somebody. And in that course, I've been really lucky to lean into my connections with the RCMP and the medical legal system. Students have toured the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner to understand the climate, to understand some processes. And we often have guest speakers from police agencies who come in and talk about how investigations flow and how anthropologists can contribute to the work that they do because they really don't know, right? They might not know if remains are human or not, or to what extent we can learn different kinds of information from the different bones that are recovered, right? So that's one course that I teach. Another course that I teach is skeletal trauma. So that's really getting into interpreting how bones in the body respond to stress, right? And that information might be applied in the medical legal, like forensic cases, but a lot of the students who come our way might not go and work in the forensic context. They might become bioarchaeologists, right? I know of researchers who are recovering the remains of veterans from World War I as glaciers are melting, right? And there's, of course, a lot of story that needs to be told there, right? So skeletal trauma is the other one. I also teach a 300 level course, and that's practical methods in biological anthropology. So that's trying to teach art students some of these concepts in science about how we collect data, what is data integrity, how do we do statistical analyses, these kinds of things, and catch them up and prepare them in case they want to go the research route and maybe do some undergraduate research through the honors program. It gives them a bit of scientific rigor going into that kind of a course.
Well, that is so interesting. And do you use, like you talk about being the curator? I think that was the language you used for two particular collections at the University of Alberta. So do you use those labs or those collections as part of the teaching that you do?
Yes. So both of those collections are teaching collections. So the courses are right in the lab space, and students are able to, make a lot of the observations that they would need to actually go and do the work. They are very hands-on courses. And that's, part of why they're senior level classes, right?
Well, that is so interesting. Darn it. Yeah, and just it, and I'm going to say that I imagine there's a lot of interest in the area of forensic anthropology because we see all of these television programs now that always bring in forensics in the solving of cases and, like, yeah. So we always see a medical examiner, and I imagine a medical examiner is very much like a forensic anthropologist in some of the cases.
Yes, very a lot of similarities into what we do, right? Um, so yeah, there's a lot of interest in forensic anthropology and even in skeletal trauma. We really explore the limits of interpretation, right? Sometimes all that we can do is provide a description, but we might not, like, we can't reconstruct events to the same extent that they do on TV, right? Um, but I think which is really good for students to know. My biggest two goals, my two main goals for that course is one, to teach students the breadth and depth of what you're expected to know if you're working in the forensics landscape, right? So that will help students to decide, is this really for me? Because I wouldn't want them to figure that out after doing a master's or after doing a PhD and realize, hey, well, this isn't what I signed up for, right? But also for maybe the one or two students in the class who do decide to work in that context, maybe it's as a research analyst, maybe it's as a investigator. Some of them actually go on to join the police force. They're at least better prepared. So they will have actually written a field report. They will have done a mock forensic report. They've practiced the assessments, and they can effectively communicate the limits of our analysis to the investigators that they would be working with.
Yeah, that sounds so much more like, I mean, on television, you just get the sense that you're amazing humans who can tell everything, right? And
Yes.
you are amazing humans, but you're also, there are limits, and that's what's reminding me of. Can I ask you one more question? I want to go back to the writing. Like, so what do your children think of these beautiful books that you've written for them and with them in a way? Because it's your relationship with the children.
You know what? It's so funny because the song that I had written for my son, he really needed a lot when he was little. Like, I rocked him and rocked him and rocked him. Like, I was in that glider all the time, and I sang that song to him. Um, we don't read the book very much. Like, he's looked at it and he's very in tune with the natural world. So he loves Carla Joseph's illustrations. Like, she did such a beautiful job with that book. But he doesn't often ask for the book, but sometimes he'll ask me to sing that song. So it's interesting, right? Because he really wanted that song. He remembers that. But my daughter is a little bit different. She was always very independent, even when she was little. And my son is probably as tone deaf as I am, so he didn't mind me singing. But when my daughter could raise her hand, she actually covered my mouth one time when I was singing this lullaby. She's very musical like her dad, and I'm not. I try. But she has told me, like, when she was probably two, like, Mom, stop singing, kind of thing, right? But she wants to look at the book. Like, she connects with the imagery, she connects with the words. She's really, it's my son is like fauna and she's flora. Like, she connects with the plants so much. She loves gardening and everything, right? So she really sees the beauty in it. And because there's the biography, now they really get, oh, you wrote this book. And I said, yeah, I wrote it for you when you were a baby. Do you remember me singing it to you? And of course, my daughter doesn't, but my son does. So yeah, it's quite funny.
I've really enjoyed this conversation, Tonya. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here and to visit with us and to share all of these amazing projects that you do, all of the things that mean so much to you. I can really see it when you're talking about this work, the projects you're teaching. I can see how much it all means to you. And I just think, yeah, uh, I wish you all the best, and I can't wait to see what you come out with next. I can't wait to keep in touch and keep learning more about you. So thank you so much. Hi, hi.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
And
been such a pleasure to be here. Hi, hi.
yeah, so Tonya, we will invite you to say the final words, but I just wanted to acknowledge too that, yeah, I look forward to the next story you're going to tell, maybe the next story you're going to write. Um, and it's been an honor to see how you do your whole expression changes as you talk about this beautiful work you do around forensics, around curatorial practices, around being a mom, and around being an author. And thank you for sharing that with us. And we're so honored and are grateful for all the ways that you contribute to the University of Alberta. So I would invite you to end our time together in whatever way is most comfortable for you.
I think I just want to say thank you so much, Florence and Michelle, for having me. It's been honestly just really refreshing and so fun to reflect on. Like, I have so much gratitude thinking about all of these things that I really get to do here and the ways that I get to explore all of like human existence in all of its different forms. It's such a beautiful thing and experience. So thank you so much, and I appreciate it. I look forward to our next conversation.